do alerts and workflow. So let me just click here. So yeah, today my agenda, I'm gonna talk about what an alert is. So we do what an alert is. I'll show you the alert manager, what it does, show you the inbox. We'll go through the workflow process. I'll show you SAP Business One Studio, talk about the options, little demo of workflow, talk about licenses and costs, resources for workflow, and then do a Q&A. So starting with alerts, alerts, very simply, it is a service that runs behind SAP Business One that on a timer triggers a query, and if that query returns results, then it alerts certain users. So basically, it allows you to, manage by exception, and you can set up various scenarios that, you don't want to have to actively check every single day, but you can have SAP Business One run those queries to alert you if any of those scenarios come up. So let's take a look. So in Business One, most of the alert work is done under Modules Administration Alerts Management. I'll just find my example. I have a few in here. So open shipments ready to invoice in the last 7 days. So basically you can see this one's not active because it would just keep going off. And so this would normally be active, but shipments ready to invoice would be the subject. And it runs a saved query. So I'll open up my query manager, I'll go to alerts, and I'll go to open shipments. So basically you just need to run, and this is a very simple query, I won't go over it too much, but it returns some information about the delivery, when the delivery is open, and if it's open within the last 7 days. So maybe something's older than that, you don't want to know about it, but this is a trigger so that the accounts receivable person knows a shipment went out and they will get a list of the documents. So what happens here is you can set that up, you set the frequency, so every day at 8 a.m. I have all sorts of different scenarios for this type of thing, multi times per day. You could do 2 alerts, it depends on what you're doing or how frequently you want to know. Some people just want a specific alert on a Monday, or every day, or every hour. Maybe it's that frequent that you want this query to run because it's such an important exception. So you can see this INT is internal. So I'll show you that in a second, but you can also do an email, so it can alert you and send an email out to specific people. So the internal alert looks like this. So this would actually pop up, and if you haven't heard it, it makes kind of this like doo-doo, this noise like, inbox arrival, and then you can click on it. And you can see that you're gonna have all these records that need to be invoiced. So of course, this is a delivery system. And then you can click and drill down into them and view them. So it is a really good way for you to, again, manage by exception. If there are certain things you can say, maybe POs that are overdue, maybe a day or 2 over the delivery date that was set in the system, you can have SAP warn you about that. And again, you don't have to worry too much. And this management by exception is a really good system. So if you can think of any query that you could possibly think of, any scenario you can possibly think of, we can build a query for that to compare and give you alerts. I've also built alerts into dashboards too. So the same queries, you could, similar to the alerts, if you had a dashboard, like this is a B1UP dashboard, you could do an alert, or in the case of the one I'm thinking of, it could be like new e-commerce orders. So you could have an alert for somebody to handle those new e-commerce orders, or you could also have it on a dashboard and have a grid like this too. So that's another option.
Mike, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Are these dashboards that you have there, is this basic SAP or is it B1UP?
This is B1UP. So
Okay.
I kind of, I don't want to say sneaky, but you see a car commercial and it says this car is not a stock car. This isn't stock Business One.
Okay.
This is the B1 Up dashboards. This is basically default dashboards here. So this is
Okay.
something we'll likely mention in the next
Okay, I just
webinar.
wanted to know because I didn't see this in the French presentation this morning, and I was wondering if this could be done to have the like the dashboards. So the other things that you're going to show us are basic SAP, but if they want the dashboards, if someone has B1 up, they could get this done, right?
Exactly. So
Right.
this is basically default
Okay.
B1 usability package.
Okay.
It's no secret I'm a
Okay. All right.
B1 usability
Okay.
package fan, but yeah,
All right.
that's a good clarification.
Thanks.
So the second part of this that we're going to talk about is what is workflow. So workflow it's I guess you could say kind of similar to alerts in a way. It can automate your processes and it makes conditional steps that the system will follow, and it will prompt users like an alert with a work list. But let's take a look at a couple examples here. So in the workflows are generated in the SAP Business One Studio. So you're going to see here this logical kind of visual flow, and this is how they're built, not necessarily what you're going to see, but you have all these different tools from your toolbox, and then you can put together a flow based on certain logic, and you can add these various tasks to handle a way of handling a business process within SAP that will automate certain steps for that process. So in this case, this is an SAP out of the box scenario, and this is one that they will provide. It's provided in this workflow documentation that I'll refer to, and you can see it uses the various events. So I'll just go through what kind of events there are, and then we'll talk about this scenario and another scenario. So in this case, this is a manually triggered event, which isn't terribly useful in the real system, but this again is an out-of-the-box SAP system. So I have another one that's got a different start point. Start event starts here. Timer start event, this can be just run on a timer similar to the alerts. Conditional start event, so this can be run based on certain conditions showing up. And you can say, okay, if this exists, then trigger this flow. A user task is something that people have to do within SAP. And these ones show up on your work list. So you can see the little human bust there. The manual task is something that would be done outside of SAP. And outside of SAP meaning like a phone call or, move something around or do something. And this is kind of like, did you finish? It's a description of the task and it says, did you finish this task? If yes or no, and then it can go on through the workflow. So that's a good way to capture that outside of the system. And a script task, which is really neat because a script task can do all sorts of things like the SDK. It uses JavaScript, and it uses a particular API like the DI API, and in their own wording or in their own kind of syntax, and it can do all sorts of different things. So you can see that this one is taking a new business partner that was just added and it's setting it to an active. So what this is going to do is when a user manually adds a business partner, it's going to come back and it's going to set it as inactive, and it's going to prompt another set of users in order to do the approval. So this can be controlled user by user. I've set these all up to be for myself just for simplicity of the webinar, but you can say if any user makes it, set it to inactive on hold, and then it'll add, it'll send a work list alert to this particular other users to approve it. They can, the next ones we have here are gateways. So this is an exclusive gateway, which means it either is approved or it's not approved. And then you also have parallel gateways, so you can evaluate whether it'll go and do parallel tracks. So you could, in theory, make this quite a complicated flow of events in here. And in this case, I'm just kind of showing off an example one from SAP. So exclusive gateway, parallel gateway. If it's not set to approved, it goes back to the update BP workflow list. and then it can be resubmitted back into the approval until it's finished and approved. You have SAP Business One data object, so you can, is this one, in this case, this is the business partner that's related to this, and it kind of brings everything together here. Customized data objects are more or less variables that you can transfer information between tasks. And then you have a regular end event, which will just trigger that, which will terminate that particular chain, or you have a terminate end event, which will end the entire workflow. So you combine these all together and it makes a nice little flow. So I have another one here. So this one is, again, a manual start. This is more of just an example. You make a sales order. The sales order is related to a decision whether you have enough stock to fulfill it. If you do have enough stock to fulfill it, it goes to the delivery prompt. If you don't have enough stock delivered, it goes to the purchase order. It's using this customized data object to store a variable, and then it terminates. So this is another interesting one because if a sales order is created, it'll do the logic of the make buy decision, and then it'll do the prompt users using an alert style to make a delivery or a purchase order. So let's take a closer look. Oh, and then you export. So you export these templates. All of the users don't need the Business One Studio. This will just to make the process, and then we'll go back to SAP. Under workflow, you have workflow manager. I have two here. So I'm going to show you the free gift item to a new customer. Actually, I could show you that in here too. So this is another one that comes default from SAP. So this is a conditional start, being adding a new business partner. That's marked as new. Then it's going to make a free gift for this particular customer. So, that's a really interesting one. It just comes from the scenarios given to us in the workflow examples. So there are quite a few. So you can see here the documentation. I can provide you with this documentation too. So this is the different scenarios that SAP has brought. So I'm going to show you first the free gift, and then I'll show you how to trigger the approval process. So the first one, if you go to Business Partner, you're just working through your regular day, and you go and you add a new example customer. This is just a normal user doing their thing. I'm going to set a particular, have these as a requirement here. So I'm going to do my basic setup here, and then I'm going to add. So once this is added, hopefully there's a little delay. We'll see if this shows up here. It hasn't triggered there yet, but usually I could wait here. I've set it to trigger every minute, so we'll just have to sit here for a second. But these are other ones I've done today. Maybe I'll just give it 2 seconds. So basically it's waiting in the background to trigger that process, and it'll trigger that process and it'll pick up the new customer. It reads this hidden UDF, new customer, and then it will make an invoice for them with a free gift, and then it actually sets the customer status to then existing customers. So let's see if this did it here. Yeah, so you can see it switched it to existing customer, and you don't need to keep checking that, but you will see that in the system, my new example customer gets a nice free gift, and this could be again, triggered as a delivery, then the delivery could be automatically printed to the warehouse to ship it, and any kind of scenario like this. So this is a really useful one. It picks up the new business partner condition, and it actually made a free gift item right today automatically. I didn't even have to do anything. So the second one I'm going to show you is a manually triggered event. So this is from the workflow instance. This could also be triggered from adding a BP as well. In this case, again, I didn't want to really mess around too much with the default SAP ones. I'll show you what you can actually get with the workflow documentation. So this would be triggered from here. So this could be like creating a new campaign. Maybe you had a whole bunch of different steps you need to create a campaign, and you're going to trigger that. Or maybe it's like preparation for a trade show. Maybe it's certain things where you just want to send out a bunch of tasks and things that people need to do and enter into SAP. So I'm going to trigger this to start it. So you can see here that once I've triggered this, this can go through to various users. And in this case, this has come to me. I've just set everything to myself. So this workflow list here, this will be the same as an alert popping up, and it'll say, oh, you have new things in your pool of workflow that you can do. So I can add this, and I can look at the details. So this is telling me, this is where it's going to show up. So I'm going to need to make a business partner. And I can pick this up and say, I'm going to do this. And what I'm going to do is process it. So when I process it, it knows I need to add a new business partner. So I'm going to go webinar example, go through. I have just a couple of, I should have probably just removed my validation, but I didn't. So that's it. So that goes through. And you can see that it went through here and it did the processing. It knew that I added the BP through that. This is actually a different task. So again, if I switched users, it would be a little bit more complicated, but this would have finished my part of the process. Say it could be other users. Then I get a prompt now for the BP approval to take a look at this user. So I can see this business partner here. I can take a look at this webinar example, and then I can, in this case, I'm just going to be nice and activate it. So, oops. Activate it here. And then this should go through. So this is done. I'll pick this up. I forgot I had to do it through there. And then it just goes through. Pick this up. Actually, I already approved it. Sorry, I have to process it through here. And then it will trigger this. Okay, refresh. And then you can see it runs through and it finishes that process there. I forgot, in order to trigger it, you need to trigger it from the work list. So that's the processes there for a conditional start and then a manual start. Again, with the manual start, it's more just to give you an example in this webinar, but you could do anything you want. Those are relatively simple ones. And let's go back to our agenda really quickly. So the workflow demo I showed you, licenses and cost, there's no additional licenses. The cost would simply be to generate the workflow scripts. So you can do them yourselves, and I'll show you the workflow resources. So the workflow resources, this is what we have here. We have the API reference, and we have the kind of how to configure the workflow service and design the workflow process. So you get these documents, you get some business scenario examples. So I showed you one of these or two of these, and you can take these and reverse engineer them, look at them and see how they've done them, look at the documentation. And then there are a few script task examples. So I used the free gift, but you can see there's add activity, add BP, add an order, add UDO, campaigns, cancel things. You can do filter a delivery to create an invoice, close a production order, update a service call, and certain things in there too. So you have this README, which gives you certain ones of these flows need specific UDFs, so you can go through there. So if you can think of something you want to reinforce or play around with, if you're a DIY type person, if you contact Tracy, just
You'll
reply
send me
to the
the
webinar.
documents, Mike, in case somebody asks for them. I'll have them.
Yeah, I'll send you this package here. This is the main package for understanding how to handle workflow. And yeah, that's it for me today for workflow. That's a quick review. So we have alerts. Alerts are run in the background, same as workflow. Alerts and workflow are both processes that run in the background. They're triggered in different ways. The alerts are always triggered by a frequency or a timing. You say every day or every hour you want to do it. Workflow can be triggered by a timer, but can also be manually triggered or conditionally triggered. And then they either, in the case of the alert, it pops up the query results and says, hey, here are some exceptions. Here are some things that you've said you wanted to be alerted on in this schedule. And workflow can actually process and go through very complex workflow decision processes in order to distribute tasks between specific groups of users or individual users in order to reinforce a business process. And it can also make documents, and it can do a lot of different things in relation to the workflow process. So are there any questions about this or anything that I've shown today?
If you don't have your mics, you can go through the chat box. Hang on, Mike. I think we do have one here. Just a second here. Oh no, that was someone that was asking for something for version 9.2. Okay, Philip, I'll get back to you on that one. You wanted information on. All right. Does anybody have any questions for Mike?
Kevin says, which Kevin is this? Yeah, so Kevin says, where do I find the workflow? Okay, so workflow, just email back to Tracy. I'll send her this package of information. This says how to configure the workflow service. The workflow service is accessed through the system landscape directory in order to see the services, but primarily you're going to work with the B1 Studio, which comes in with the installation package for your patch level. So where you have all your server tools and all your extra stuff, the main patch level as a consultant and with Forgestic, we typically just store that on the SAP server. So on the SAP server, you're going to find the package of the installation files. Just go in there. In one of the packages, you're going to see B1 Studio, and you can install that. So you need the B1 Studio to do the editing and the export of the XBML activity. And then you're also going to need the workflow service running, which will be from your SLD. But this PDF gives you all the information in there, and you can see, it goes through all the steps and how to configure the templates, configuring the workflow process, where to find it, et cetera, et cetera. So, good question. Anybody else?
You'll send me that, Kevin. Kevin, can you send me an email afterwards if you wanted any documents on this? Because I have a few Kevins in my list here, just to make sure that I've got the right one, and I'll send you the documents. So Tracy, Tracy at forgestic.com, and I'll send you the documents for Mike. All right, that he sends me.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So, any other questions? No.
Okay, guys. So, Mike, thanks. Look, you all have my email right there. If you need anything, if you want a copy of this, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody. Thanks a lot, Mike.
All right.
Okay, bye, guys.
Bye.